did you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to be giving you the update to the Infused DK. Now this build has been around and altered as such per patch for over a year now, and he's still going very strong. Now of course if you read the title you can see it's called Nirn-Fused now. You can blame Jack ESO from Patreon for that one, he made the name up, so I'm putting this one on you. But basically, obviously as you can see, maybe one of the traits has changed. Not all of it, but some of it. Of course, as well as there's a lot of different CPs and stuff. I'm going to go over this very in-depth in terms of how all the skills are positioned, why they're there, what they do, and all that kind of stuff, as well as the overall idea for the build. Now, this obviously is made as an advanced setup. You can use it throughout the game for all content, but this is very specific. The gear is specific, the weapons are specific, otherwise it'll perform differently if you try and mess with it. You can, but you won't get the same results. All the content that I do, I use this because this is my main. So, I'm going to go over everything in detail. I'll start off first, of course, with the stats. Let's get our buffs on, and a weapon proc will be nice because we can use that now on Maelstrom weapons. Awesome. 4.6k weapon damage, 64% crit, 64.1 in fact, almost 10k max magicka, 18k max health, so we're quite tanky in comparison to most staminas. They're normally like 15, 16k before buffs. 38.3k stamina and almost 900 recovery. Resists are so-so, but in certain situations you get those buffed anyway, although if you want to put resist buff on, of course you can. All points into stamina. You see I have 18k health, but I still have all my points in stamina. If you still want more health, you're more than welcome to. You can put some in here, but just understand that you will lose a little bit of damage because your stamina will go down. Thief Munderstone, not the warrior. I'm using the thief specifically to take advantage of the crit. For good reason. If I go too high on weapon damage, I'm just going to benefit my lights and heavies a little bit too much. I'm not going to push everything else where I want to. Max health, max stamina food, which I'll show you in a moment. And we are a level 4 vampire. Yes, I'm a level 4 vampire on all of my characters apart from a PvP werewolf, I believe. You do take more damage from fire, but as I've said 100 times before, this is down to you. Most fire damage, not all of it, but most of it, is either an AoE on the ground, which, surprise, you can step out of. It aims at you across the floor, so you can step away from it, or it aims straight at you in a single direct damage type, which you can either block or dodge roll. Most fire damage is one of those three kinds in a very large proportion of the game. There are some situations where there's fire damage that you cannot avoid, but then you just plug your CPs to certain damage type mitigations, or get resist buffs, or just make sure that your healers and your tanks, if they're giving you shields, are on point. And you will be fine. The most aggressive one, I guess, is Vet AA, actually, on the last boss. If you do hard mode, you do take a lot of fire damage. However, dual wield, we do have reduction to AoE as well, which I'll get to. And I have also done that without dying, without struggling, because of the way this is set up. So the vampire did not affect me at all. I was absolutely fine. In fact, I've not died on executing Vet AA unless it was a wipe, because I had to. Anyway, let's get into the food, because I did just say it was max health, max stamina. This is the stuff you really want to use. There is a couple of variations to this, or there are a couple of variations to this, but as long as you have the CP 150 to 160 max health, max stam food, this would be the same stats you get for all of them. Potions, I am using weapon power potions. So I'm using Major Brutality, Major Savagery, and Major Endurance. This means that I get 20% extra weapon damage, I get an increase of almost 10% crit, chance by the way, not damage, and I also gain stamina back when I pop a potion, but I keep an uptime of 20% additional stam recovery. This is very important. I go through thousands of these, I have lost count to be honest, but these are the ones I use for the build. Now, let's look over first of all the skills, because these are very important of course. Venomous Claw, this is a ridiculous single target damage over time ability. It's very strong, it lasts 10.5 seconds and it ticks every 2 seconds. However, every 2 seconds that it's on, it will get progressively stronger. So, do not do this. Do not do that. You will not benefit from it at all. What you need to do is apply it once. Now watch, it will get stronger. 4 point nothing on a crit. 4.8. This is without buffs, obviously. Come on, crit. Stupid thing. You go again. 4.0. 4.4. That would have been higher. That would have been higher. Come on, crit. Bastard. You get the idea. It gets progressively stronger. Now, 3.3, 3.7, 4.1. That didn't crit. Neither did that. Thanks for that. 5.3. You can see where I'm going with it. It gets progressively stronger. And that, with our buffs on and with our Maelstrom weapons, really, really counts. Now, make sure you have this on all the time. It's got to have 100% uptime if you can help it. If not, reapply it as soon as possible. You need to make sure, of course, that it finishes the last tick if you can. And that comes from this skill line here, from Ardent Flame. It's the second one you unlock. You get it very, very early in the game. Starts off as a flame ability, but you morph it into poison because, of course, you want it to be the stamina version, not the magicka. Next up is Rearming Trap, excuse me, which comes from the Fighter's Guild skill line. Under here. It's the last one you unlock apart from the ultimate, so you do have to have high Fighter's Guild to do this. However, this is very, very strong. Not only does it do a very, very decent physical damage over time to a single target, it also immobilizes them if they can be immobilized. And even if they can't, don't worry, as long as this ability is active or doing damage, you will gain minor force, meaning all of your crits will be increased by a further 10%. It's very, very powerful. You can use it on bosses as well. They don't have to be stunned. As long as the dot is ticking on them, which it will be, you'll get this bonus. Also, because it's rearming, it will reapply itself as soon as it is finished. So 6 seconds, it will reapply. 6 seconds again, it will carry on. So you get 12 seconds out of this overall. This is how it works. Put it under the target. That will catch him. And it does damage. Take note, it's a single target damage over time, so that's very important. Now watch. Run out, pop again. You can keep this up once every 12 seconds, it will never run out. Really, really important. Camo Hunter, Evil Hunter, or Expert Hunter. It's up to you which version you choose. It's only Camo Hunter because I use it in PvP sometimes. But it's also in the Fighters Guild. Come on, get to the list quicker. Not far off the end, but you can level it up quite quick. I think it's either Fighters Guild 5 or 6. It's not too far in. You can get that just by farming dolmens or killing zombies or something. It doesn't take very long. This goes on a bar for 2 reasons. You can put it on there for the crit if you don't use pots, but I do. So that bit's irrelevant. But above all, it has a passive bonus. I will get into the Fighters Guild passives, but this basically, for being on our bar, gives us 3% increased weapon damage. I will get to that in a bit. However, you can switch this out depending on the situation. Now, let's say for argument's sake you are in a dungeon with lots and lots of damage, area of effect damage specifically, and lots of adds, or lots of enemies at once. I'll go into the dual wield so you can see where it is. You can switch this for Steel Tornado. But, caution. This costs 2.6k stamina. It's expensive. It's the third one down in the dual wield. Now what you do, just spin, everyone in range will take damage. But the less health they have, the more damage it deals. Up to 100% more damage. And inside the dual wield passives, you'll also note, which I'll show in a little while, that also gets progressively stronger the lower their health based on a passive, which means you do more damage under 25% health of the target. So this doesn't just get 100% more aggressive, it also gets stronger the lower their health as well, based on that passive combined. But the reason I say you want to make sure you've got lots and lots of damage in your group before you start spamming it is because if you do this, you are going to run... Look at my stamina. It is struggling. I can probably fire off about 10 of these safely, and then I really have to start fighting for my sustain or popping potions. It's really expensive. It's not great for spamming. But if you have lots and lots of damage and things are hitting low health quite quickly, that's your window. You start seeing things drop below 20%, smash it. If they're not, I wouldn't spin it at all because your damage is rubbish. For example... Oh, the poison procs. 4k with a non-crit. Come on, crit. That was rubbish. 7.7. There you go. When you hit targets that are very, very low health, especially if you've got buffs on in certain situations, let's say for argument's sake you're in a trial and you've got all the shiny buffs at once, this can hit anywhere up to 27, maybe even 30k occasionally if you're lucky. 7k is because his health is too high at the moment. You need to use it when they're very low health. Now, Because I said they need to be very low when you use this, you need to make sure that your group has a lot of damage, because they can push their health down a lot faster, meaning you don't have to press this so often. If your group doesn't have loads and loads of damage, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because you are going to be forcing yourself to try and finish them off and you're not quite doing it. And you'll run out of juice. So, situational. Also, the other option is also in a dual wield. It's Deadly Cloak. Now, this is very situational as well. Don't use it all the time. But this does damage every 3 seconds, no matter what their health, and to close by targets. And it also gives you a damage reduction buff to area of effect damage. So in situations where you are definitely going to be taking area of effect damage, you're inside large AoEs, there's nothing you can do about it, it's part of the mechanics and you're going to be stuck in there for a while, then you put this on. If you stand near the target, multiple targets in fact, you do damage every 3 seconds. Not lots, but enough. It's not too bad. At the same time, remember, like I said, it's down here, by the way, the 4th one in the skill line, you will take 25% reduction to all area of effect. So that's why when I mentioned that I don't die generally unless the group wipes in A Fear in Archive on the fire phase, is because I'm taking 25% less damage from that area of effect. Yeah, I'm taking more fire damage, but I take less damage from area of effect, and that's exactly what that is. So they balance off each other. Okay, let's put that back to where it was, because on single target bosses, where I'm not getting too much AoE damage, I will slot Evil Hunter, or whichever morph of it you have. Next up is another one from our dual wield. This is Bloodthirst. Now, where is it? First one you ever unlock in dual wield is called Flurry, and you can morph it to Bloodthirst. I know, I'm going to be getting screamed at. Rapid Strikes does more damage. Yeah, tiny amount more damage. But this heals you. Does 5 hits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 5th one will do 300% more damage than the rest. But when it connects, only if it connects, the last hit, you will heal for 60% of the damage caused. However, something to pay attention to here. First of all, it's only the last hit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one, the big one, 5.2k there. Now that will heal me equivalent of 60% of the damage done. However, if I don't crit that last hit, I can crit my heal. So you can't crit a heal here if you crit on the last hit. You can't double dip on it. You either crit the damage or you crit the heal, one or the other. So if you don't crit that last hit, you can actually get quite lucky and you can heal yourself for a stupid amount. I've seen heals in excess of about 8k depending on your healing received at the time. It's disgusting. That will keep you up because the Dragonknight overall, unless you're using Dragon Blood, which we're not because it's not efficient enough for us to use alongside of our low magicka, or the fact that we've got lower health than a tank maybe that would be using it, we don't have any other heals as such apart from the basics ones that all other staminas can get. We don't have like crit surge like the Stam Sork or anything like that. We need to try and survive in other ways. So I change this to Bloodthirst instead of Rapid Strike so that the more I'm stuck into the target, every single hit of this, I'm healing on the last one. Every single one. I'm constantly healing. It's like puncturing sweeps for a Templar. It's nuts. High damage and healing for doing so. Blood Craze. This is also in the dual wield. And I've just exited my menu like a dum-dum. Here we go. Second skill you ever unlocked. I forget what it's called to start with. Twin Slashes, that's what it's called. And then you can change this to this morph, or you can change it to Rend and Slashes. Personally, I use this. Rend and Slashes has a little more damage on the initial hit, but the dot is exactly the same. However, this version, you heal once every 2 seconds. And this can crit because it's a flat heal. It doesn't base off your damage. But the single target damage it does is actually a bleed over 9 seconds. Bleeds ignore resistances. So it doesn't matter what your penetration is for your weapons or your CPs or anything like that, this ignores resists. And it's very, very strong alongside the Maelstrom weapons as well. But to put the two together, if you are using this and these, every one of these Bloodthirst is going to heal you, and for every 2 seconds, the Blood Craze is going to heal you. So you are healing for doing damage. That's very, very important to our survival, and of course our DPS overall as well. Flawless Dawnbreaker. This one you need Fighters Guild level 10. Takes a little while. Farm dolmens, kill zombies, all that kind of shiny stuff. Anything that's offensive to humans, I guess. Not creatures, more like Daedra and undead, basically. Anything that the Fighters Guild want you to smite. Once you get level 10, you can unlock this skill. you need to morph it to Flawless Dawnbreaker, because it gives you 5% increased weapon damage alongside some more passives, which I'll get to. I don't actually use this skill as a damage skill as such. I use the back bar ultimate instead, which I'll come to, but this is very, very cheap. You get resources back for using ultimates, which I'll get to in the passives, but because it's low cost, you won't get many resources back, nor will it really dramatically increase your DPS. The only times I ever really use this is if I'm really low health and I'm about to die. I use it as a no shit button to get resources back. Or if the boss is about to die, I don't have much ultimate, but I do have enough to fire this off. That's when I'll use it inside my rotation then. So it's a finisher if you haven't got enough for your big ultimate, and it's a no shit button if you're about to die. Those passives will make more sense when I get to them, although if you're already experiencing a DK, you know where I'm going with it. Back bar. Resolve and Vigor. This is from the Assault skill line. You will have to go to PvP for this, but basically find a big group of people, stick to them, get your points, get this and get out. Basically, fire for heal. Anyone within 10 meters who you heal gets a heal once a second for 5 seconds, yourself included. And that does, of course, stack alongside our healing that we get done from our abilities. So, very, very nice in a situation where you're starting to struggle with your health sustain. Poison Injection. This is really, really, really powerful single target damage over time ability. Poison damage I might add, so it's a little bit stronger on the DK. This gets more aggressive the lower the target's health. So under 50%, it gets more and more aggressive and does more and more damage, up to 260% more than the initial. Now, I've seen a lot of people use this occasionally. They've been using it, some people, not all, when the target goes low health only. False. That's not the way to use it. Use this all of the time. It's a very strong dot, and for free, just for keeping it in your rotation, it eventually gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's a passive execute, if you like. So while your dots are running, inevitably your damage will increase as they go lower, and the same for your dual wield as well, because there's an execute passive built into there as well, but I'll get to that. This is in the bow skill line, by the way. It takes a while to unlock it. You need to be level 42 in the bow to get it, I believe, and it takes quite a while, but you are going to need this. You're going to need all the passives and stuff anyway, so I recommend getting this to 50 as soon as possible. What's next? Caltrops. Again, if you don't like PvP, you're probably going to hate this, but you will need to go into PvP to get it. This is in the Assault skill line also, and it is underneath Vigor. It's the next one. Vigor is Assault level 4. Razor Caltrops, I believe, is 5. I don't remember. It's a very long time ago since I got this character, Caltrops, and they changed stuff since, but it's the next one down anyway. It's what you need to get afterwards. This is very strong indeed. It throws out an area of effect. Damage over time. Everything inside of that will get damaged. Let me switch bars so you can actually see what it does. Although I've got no buffs on anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. Unbuffed. Not far short of 2k physical damage every second. And an initial hit as well. Razor Caltrops specifically. It's really, really strong. Most dots are around 2 seconds. This is every 1. So I would highly recommend using this. However, if you don't have it or you don't preference it, what you can do is you can change it for Noxus Breath. Now, I know a lot of DKs out there use both. Honestly, I don't, because I don't see the need to, and of course, it doesn't fit into my rotation very well. Noxus Breath is in the Ardent Flame skill line, which I will show you when I bloody find it. Where are you? There you are. It's the third one down. Very, very easy to unlock. You get it quite early in the game. What this does is this applies damage in area of effect inside that cone of flame stroke poison. Every single target, oops, CPs, whoops. Every single target affected by that will take poison damage, and it will also apply major fracture. Now, the reason I don't use this is because generally the tank applies a taunt, which applies major fracture anyway, so I don't necessarily need it for the debuff. And if the target is already debuffed, Caltrops does more damage, specifically on this build, because I'm using a lot of physical bonuses. But it's up to you. If you preference this, fine, go for it. The DPS difference overall isn't all that much if you don't have all the buffs and shiny stuff, because obviously it debuffs in area of effect. But if your tank is on point and he's taunting everything anyway, you don't actually need it. So I preference Caltrops, especially for this build, and you'll see why in the gear sets, but you can use it if you want. Especially if you don't want to go to PvP to get Caltrops, then just stay out of there and go and get Noxus Breath instead. Molten Armaments, this is very, very, very important. This, the other morph of it, Igneous Weapons, does increase your weapon damage by 20%. In fact, Major Brutality. Our potions already do that, so we don't need it. This morph gives us Major Sorcery, which we don't technically need, but it does buff other people with it instead, which is quite nice. Saves them on potions if you want to go down that route. And lasts for 40 seconds almost, 39.6 to be specific. However, this increases our heavy attack damage by 40%, which is nuts. And we are heavy attacking, so we do want to boost that. So this does contribute to our DPS overall. Also, there's a passive attached to this, which is very, very strong, and I will let you know in a moment when I get to those passives why I use this more than once every 39 seconds. It's not just a case of keeping the buff up, there's other stuff attached to it. This is very, very strong, and this is in the Earth and Heart skill line. Second ability you unlock, get it as soon as possible. It's very, very powerful. Endless Hail. This is the final skill before we get to our ultimate. It is in the bow skill line, the second one down. Starts off as volley. Morph it to Endless Hail. It's really, really, really strong, especially alongside of our Maelstrom weapon, which gets really, really high damage from using this skill. Basically, which I will explain in a moment, the Maelstrom weapon makes each tick of this get progressively stronger the longer the damage over time is active. This fires like this. Small area of effect. Everything inside of it takes damage every half a second. The fastest dot there is in our skill lines, 0.5 seconds. Every 0.5 seconds it does around 2k-ish damage. It actually does a lot more than that, but on flat, looking at it from a bow bar with no buffs, that's what it looks like. Get this as soon as possible. Also, it's not too bad stamina cost-wise in comparison to Caltrops. Caltrops is really expensive, but you do need them both. Finally, Standard of Might. This is disgusting. Have I got enough ultimate to fire it? Maybe. Let me hit him first. Yes, I do. Good. I can show you in a second. Basically what this does, it does flame damage every 1 second for 17 seconds to everything inside the area. Also reduces their healing received. So if they have a healing mechanic, you knock that down a bit. But above all, this has the ability to give you 15% increased damage to everything you are doing or everything that was already active when it landed. It's really, really powerful. And at the same time, you reduce the damage you take by 15% as well. So you can see how this is a mitigation for you and a damage increase for you. There's a few people I've seen in the past that keep trying to tell everyone this is for everyone. This is not. This is just for you. But it's really, really strong, and it has a synergy attached to it. If anyone takes that synergy, they do a rather large amount of damage in burst area of effect, and also they chain all of the immobilizable, I guess, enemies on the spot. Not bosses, but anything that can be chained, rooted, stunned, they get chained on the spot. Really, really powerful, and I'm going to show you how this works. First of all, don't forget it's in the Ardent Flame, whoops, wrong one, Ardent Flame skill line, and you unlock it at level 12. It's really, really quick. But any damage that you're doing now, for example, here's a dot ticking over. I don't have to cast that inside my banner to get the bonus damage. I just fire it. Everything that I reapply will of course get damage, and everything that was already running will get the damage. It's just while I'm inside of it. It's really, really strong. And of course, it costs 250 ultimate. I'm going to get to the passives in a moment and explain why this is important, but this is the one we need to be using. Dawnbreaker is an oh shit moment if we're running out. This all the rest of the time. Now, passives. Important stuff. You need to get every single one of these. They are incredibly important. Increase the damage of your burning and poison status effects by 50%. So basically any flame type status effect that you'd get maybe from your banner or from glyphs if you were using them. If it procs burning, this will be increased, and your poison status effects as well. I don't know if I can fire one off. Let's see. Look for the skull on the skeleton, the purple one. There you go, that purple dot there. That's really, really strong. There's a stupid amount of damage for free, in fact, of poison damage for 6 seconds. And it ticks every 2, I believe. And that procs by chance, by the way, when you're using poison damage, including our glyph. So it's got a decent uptime, and we're using some poison damage. Poison injection, venom claw, and a proc from our weapon. I'll show you that in a moment. This, anything that takes damage from an Ardent Flame ability will be snared. Helps you chase things down quite quickly. Not necessarily essential in PvE, but it helps nonetheless, so get that one. Increases the damage of your Fiery Breath, which is Noxus Breath if you're using it, Searing Strike, which is Venom Claw, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 3%, which is our banner, and also increases their duration by 2 seconds. Very, very important to get this as soon as possible. And of course, increases the damage of our Flame and Poison area of effect abilities. Now, our banner is area of effect, so that counts. We're not using any other area of effect, poison or flame abilities. However, if you switch to Noxus Breath, that does count towards that. So that's where, although our bonuses are towards physical on this particular setup, the poison will be boosted, so it's quite nice. But also there is another ultimate you can use. Now I use this very situational, but it's quite good if you're using, if you're in situations where you're going to be taking a stupid amount of damage, situations where you're trying to run no death runs, for example, or maybe even Maelstrom or PvP or whatever. This here in the Earth and Heart skill line is Corrosive Armor. This will do small ranged area of effect poison damage. It will reduce the target's resistances for you, so basically you just ignore their resists. So if there's a boss at 18.2k resist, you have to meet your penetration to make it go down to 0. This you don't. You ignore their resistances completely, plus it makes you borderline immortal for 10 seconds. Basically you take 3% of your maximum health, which is quite high, per hit. So if something was supposed to hit you 20k every hit, it doesn't. It hits you for 3% of your max health. It's very, very strong. So this also contributes to that from the passives in Earth and Heart as well, if you were to use it. It's a choice. It's not massively underpowered in comparison to the banner, but it is cheaper, so you do get less resources back, but it's a big oh shit button if you want to use this instead. It's up to you. But that does benefit from this bonus here for the area of effect. Draconic Power, I'm not using any of these, so they're kind of irrelevant, although if you're a bit squishy, or you feel squishy and you want to resist buff, you can put this on. This will give you Major Ward and Major Resolve, increasing your physical and spell resistances by 5280. If you have a Warden in your group buffing the resist, you don't need this, but if you do want to use it, you can benefit from a couple of passives. First of all, this we get all the time anyway. You will be blocking, reduce the damage you take. No brainer. This one, if you do have that resist buff active, your healing received is increased by 12%. So there's your bonus for putting that on if you want to use it, but I personally don't. If you're not using it, don't bother with this passive. Same again, this increases your health recovery. You don't necessarily need this either. We're a vampire, our health recovery sucks. Don't worry about it. This you do need. It increases your spell resistance by 3299. We do want our resistances up, especially spell damage, because a lot of trials have shit tons of spell damage. Okay, Earth and Heart. Now this is where it counts. Ignis Shield is a separate subject. I use that for Maelstrom. Basically, if you use this, it increases your healing as long as your shield is active. So you quickly put it on, throw a vigor, you're safe. But that's another story. That's for another day. This is what we're using. Increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%, meaning this and this, if you choose to use it, lasts longer. No brainer, get that? This is important and possibly the most overpowered passive the DK has, and that is that if you use an ultimate ability, for every point that the ultimate costs, you get 46 of all your resources back. That's why we use a very, very expensive ultimate, and that is why we don't use the little tiny one, because the little tiny one is only 125 points, meaning we'll get resources back, we'll survive, we'll get stamina, we'll get magicka, very good, but it won't be much. But if you use the banner, not only do you do all that nice damage and have mitigation and all the rest of it, you get a shit ton of resources back. It's very, very powerful passive. You got to get it. It's essential to the DK, and that is how we sustain. This is also very, very important, and this is what I was on about with Molten Armaments as to why you need to use it more than once every 40 seconds. 39.6 to be specific if you want. When you use an Earth and Heart ability, you and your group members within 30 meters gain minor brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 5%. Now, if you look at my buff timers at the bottom there, you'll see Major Sorcery, which I don't use, the one with the hand. You'll see Molten Armaments, which is the one with the sword, and then you see the one with the hammer on the end. That's minor brutality. Now look at the cooldown timer, or the timer of the buff. You'll see that Molten Armaments is about to hit 20 seconds, and minor brutality is about to run out. I want to keep that buff, so I'll reapply this once every 20 seconds to keep it, not just for me, but for everyone else as well. So when you see all these tests or builds or whatever, and they're using Molten Armaments once every 40 seconds, letting it fall off and reapplying it again just to get the heavy attack damage, they're doing it wrong. You need to have this up once every 20 seconds. So yes, you do bloody CP, it's the wrong window. you do get increased heavy attack damage. You do keep the spell damage buff up for everybody else, but at the same time, you do give you and everybody else 5% increased weapon damage as well. Not to mention, if you use this once every 6 seconds, I actually use it a little bit less, you will get 3 ultimate for the privilege as well. It's very, very powerful passive, this, and that pushes you to utilize this correctly. One more massive bonus is if you do use it, you get 990 stamina back. So for those of you that are using it once every 40 or 50 seconds just because you forgot it fell off or you want to keep the uptime just on point of when it runs out, you could have got 2 bonuses to stamina for using it. You can stamina back, minor brutality, major sorcery, 40% increase heavy attack. Use it again, same applies. Not only that, stamina doesn't recover when you block. So this is going to show you how much you actually get back. That will contribute to your sustain. So inside your rotation, once every 2 rotations, you will get stamina back. Very, very powerful and very, very important skill line. Earth and Heart, you need to get this skill line leveled as fast as possible to take full advantage of these bottom 3 passives. They're really, really nice. Okay. Dual wield, I'm not going to go over these in too much detail. I'll probably just go over the essential ones. You do need every single one of these. But above all, when a target is under 25% health, all of your dual wield abilities, including your Steel Tornado, which I mentioned earlier, does more damage when they're low health. Your lights, your heavies, and your dual wield skills that you've got on the bar at the moment will do more damage. Also, increase your weapon damage, reduce cost, all that kind of shiny stuff. This is important. Your axe, for having it on your bar, you don't have to hit with the axe, you just have to have one on your bar because it's a collective passive for holding it. You have 8% chance to bleed the enemy, basically causing them a really nasty, unresistible damage over time ability for 6 seconds. It ticks every 2 seconds. Now, the Maelstrom weapons do contribute to this bonus damage. The Maelstrom weapons do push this damage over the edge. And I'll explain how that works in a moment, but it's very important to have this bleed. I did try 2 daggers, nowhere near as much damage. Also, don't forget, we're using a dagger as well, which increases our crit chance. So we have high crit, we have a bleed that's unresistible. You can see where I'm going with it. It's pretty nasty. You don't want to go about that bleed, especially on the DK, because their single target dots excel over other classes. What do we got? Bow. Every single passive, get them all. Reduction to cost, increased crit, all that kind of stuff. Damage bonus if you're ranged, which sometimes you are. This is very important, but don't try and max it out. I mean, I don't mean don't max the skill out. Obviously, get all the points in here, but don't try and push it to its 5 times stacking. That is specifically if you're running a bow build and you're on your bow most of the time, and you're going to have this massive bonus to your damage. This is probably only going to hit 5 to 10% extra damage on our own rotation. Otherwise, if we push to the extra 5 times stack, and we're going to do what, 5 light attacks or 5 heavies on the bow to push it over the edge, and we're going to waste so much time on our other dots. They're all going to run out. But this is an essential passive. This does increase your damage regardless of whether you hit 1 light attack or 5. Hasty Retreat, of course, make sure you get this, because if you dodge roll, you run faster. It's really, really powerful, especially for Maelstrom or for certain areas in Trials where you have to get from one place to another quite quickly. Just don't overdo it, because if you dodge roll twice, look at the cooldown, you get punished. Costs more and more the more you dodge roll. So time it. Light armor, we're not using any, don't get any points. Heavy, we're not using any, don't get any points. Medium, we're actually using 7. And you need to get every single one of these because they all contribute to your max weapon damage, your recovery, your reduction to cost, your reduction to dodge roll cost, all that kind of stuff. It's very, very nice, including crit chance as well. You need all of these passives. You can go through those in your own time if you want to look more specifically into them, but you need all of them. That's the easiest I can say on that one. Vampire, we are a vampire, of course. You need this for stage 2. You get increased stamina and magical recovery, which does help us sustain. It's essential. You don't need any skills on the bar for a vampire. You just need to be one. Then Undeaf. This is one of my favorite skills in the game. Passives even. While you're under 50% health, you take up to 33% less damage. So the lower your health is, the less damage you actually take. I know a lot of people scream about fire. I already explained that at the beginning. You need to pay attention to mechanics and stay out of it if you can, or apply certain resists and debuffs and buffs for yourself to be able to mitigate it if you are in trouble. However, this reduces all damage, not just AoE, not just single target. Everything you take if you're low health, and I have lost count how many times this on my tanks, my DPS and my heals have managed to save me. Lost count. I've even on Raka, on More of Lorcage, on the execute phase, I actually hit 0.0% health and didn't die because this didn't kill me, and then I bloodthirsted to heal while I was doing damage. It's disgusting. That's one incident. There's hundreds. This is a very, very strong passive, and I would encourage you to drop your fear of fire, focus more on getting out of it, or getting used to how it applies damage to you so you can mitigate it or avoid, and take advantage of this passive. It's very, very strong. Fighter's Guild, these are very important. Take this, of course, to reduce the cost of your Fighter's Guild abilities. We are using one, so we want to reduce the cost. Get this to increase the weapon damage by 3% for each one on your bar. Now, this is where this comes in. Beast Trap for being there, not on your back bar, because it will apply there, of course, if you wanted it to, but we're doing the damage mostly on our front bar. This, for being on a front bar, gives us 3% weapon damage. This, for being on a front bar, gives us 3% weapon damage. It's the only reason it's there. Unless you're using non-crit pots, in which case this will help you as well. And this, although it gives us 5% extra weapon damage, it also gives us another 3% as well. So this is a buff just for sitting there. This, and this buffs our overall weapon damage by 9% on our front bar. It's very, very strong. Get Banished the Wicked, so that if you kill undead, Daedra, or werewolves, you do get 9 ultimate back, which is very, very good, so we can then pop our ultimate to get sustain back and do more additional damage. And of course your Beast Trap, because the only ultimate we're really the only Fighter's Guild ability we're actually using for damage, unless of course you fire off the Dawnbreaker, undead, Daedra, or werewolves take 20% additional damage. Very, very nice indeed. This one's for Cyrodiil, up to you if you get it or not. Undaunted, these are essential. This here, if you take a synergy, you will get back 4% resources across the board. Health, magic, and stamina. Don't leave synergies on the floor. Take them. They give you resources back in this passive. They might give you resources back anyway, because it might be a spear or a bubble. They can give you shields for bone shield and stuff like that. And of course they can proc loads and loads of damage. And if you're using stuff like, maybe one of your healers is using Twilight, for example, and you pick up one of their synergies, you're going to get a massive heal, you're going to get minor force, and you're going to get resources back all at the same time. Take advantage of synergies. Don't just leave them for everybody else. You're going to need them. This is important as well. This is actually quite essential to every single build that I make, and that is that you get Undaunted 9 as soon as possible, so that you get 2% across the board, health, magic, and stamina, to all your resources, for each type of armor you are wearing. We're actually using one type, we're using medium, so we get 2% across the board. That is very important. But of course, if you're using 5 of one, 1 of another, and 1 of another, that's when that turns into 6%. Either way, this is a very powerful passive and you do need it. Finally, don't worry about these too much because they are PvP. We are an Imperial, we use this passive here to give us 12% max health, which is why I'm not a squishy 15k stamina. We use this to give us 10% more stamina, which is exactly the same as a Red Guard, meaning we pump out exactly the same DPS, although we have much more health. We don't have the same sustain as far as the passive recovery and the passive, when you do light or heavy attacks, you get stamina back, but we do get this instead. And that is your melee attacks have a 10% chance to restore 6% of your maximum health. This does buff, of course, with healing received and mending, like minor mending or major mending if you had it, if you were using Ignis Shields, for example. This does stack with all those shiny bonuses, so this can actually be quite a valuable passive, a very high heal in some situations. Our sustain is fine, so we don't actually need to go Red Guard, although if you prefer it, you can do, but it will make you a little bit squishier because you won't be able to take this passive and you won't have this. But I preference the Imperial over them all because I'm quite comfortable on my sustain anyway. Now, oh shit, there's a heal if you need it. General DPS, that's a heal. That's a heal. And so is your light and heavies because you can heal off of them with a red diamond passive. Very, very, very strong. I don't want to look at my quest, I want to go to my skills. Also, last but not least, this is essential. You don't have to max alchemy so you can make potions, if you don't want to, but you do have to max alchemy to get medicinal use to maximum. So get yourself to max alchemy, ditch all your skill points, and put 3 into here. This will make our potions last 30% longer, meaning our crit pots that we are actually using last 47 seconds. The cooldown's 45. That means if we are efficient with our potions and we make sure we use one every time it runs out, we can actually keep 100% uptime on our potions and our buffs from our potions. Huge recovery, huge damage, huge crit. Very, very important. I do have a video showing you how to get alchemy maxed in 15 minutes flat, and I will link that in the description. Okay, I think that's most of the skills explained. Now I need to explain to you... We're not going to go into Maelstrom or gear. No, we will. We'll do the gear first. Okay, as you can see, the dagger has changed. The dagger is no longer infused. The dagger is Nirn-Honed. Now, you can make this the dagger or the axe. It doesn't matter, but one of these weapons needs to be Nirn-Honed, and it has to be in your main hand. Must be in your main hand. Got poison damage on this one, and a weapon damage glyph in this one. You can see we're still using an infused weapon, which was how the build was originally made, but because the 2-piece bonus for the Maelstrom, the actual perk for having this weapon, has been moved. It wasn't a 2-piece bonus before. Now it is. It used to be up here as a glyph, which would be affected directly by the trait, increasing this from 2k to 2.6. That is no longer the case. So the trait doesn't affect the Maelstrom weapon type, but what it does do is affect the glyph. So before, where I was increasing my damage to single target damage over time abilities by 2.6k, now it's 2000. However, I now plug that gap with 452. I'm 600 down, I then plug it with 452. Now that looks on paper like I'm actually doing less damage. However, I'm not. This used to be 2.6k to single target damage over time. This is 452 to everything. Volley, caltrops, the lot. So across the board, I've balanced out my damage to be much stronger than it was in the first place. But because we're using a lot of single target damage over time, just like the DK should, this is why this is an important set to use. And yes, now it is a set. Basically, you need to use Flurry, which for us is Bloodthirst. And in 10 seconds, within 10 seconds, you must use 1 damage over time ability to take advantage of the extra weapon damage to your skill. Very simple. Bloodthirst and a dot. You look in my buff window at the bottom. You can see a Flurry image with a countdown from 10 seconds. Apply a dot. It consumes it. Now that dot is stronger. Now, the bleed from your axe does count as a single damage over time ability. So it can consume the Maelstrom weapon bonus. Before, it didn't used to consume it, but it did used to work anyway. Now it does consume it. However, that's not a bad thing, because the bleed is so powerful that it can out DPS sometimes this skill or this one. So in some situations you'll have this skill and this skill proc perfectly. Your beast trap also does. That's a single target damage over time as well. But if the bleed procs, then one of the other skills will not, because it usually comes afterwards. But you still buff the damage you just applied by a shit ton. So it balances out very, very nice. Before, you used to be able to get away with this. You could, there's your bonus. You could light attack. You could beast trap, swap, volley. It's already gone. And then poison injection used to consume it. They all used to stack together, and poison injection was the one that took it. Now, the bleed can take it, the beast trap can take it, or the poison injection can take it. Meaning, the way the rotation is set out, we never actually buff poison injection via the Maelstrom weapons, but because the glyph's running, we do still buff it by 452. So it's a balanced game. It's loss on something and gain on everything else. It's very, very nice. Now, I'm going to show you the rest of the gear, of course. The bow we're using is a Nirn-Honed bow. So we're using Nirn-Honed one-hander in the main hand, and they're going to show you why. Infused in the second hand, and a Nirn-Honed bow for more flat damage when you hit. Now while volley's running, you'll see the numbers go up and up and up and up. It gets progressively stronger the longer the dot runs, and although it's not critting for me now. But anyway, we have those there. The one thing I do need to stress about this, the Nirn-Honed weapon, is that it must be on your main hand. If we look without buffs, 3, 3, 1, 6. Okay, that's for the Maelstrom weapons. What we'll do is we'll put on a random weapon here, and we'll put Nirn-Honed in the second hand. Now watch this. 3, 1, 8, 0. Let's swap the 2 specific weapons I'm holding right now around. Let's put the dagger back on the main hand, and let's put that axe I was using in the other one. Same weapons as Swamp Raider's weapon and a Maelstrom one, just randomly. 3316. You get the increased bonus damage from the Maelstrom weapon on the Nirn-Fused in the main hand, but it gives you bugger all in the offhand. Because offhand light and heavies do less damage than the main, Nirn-Fused is also affected. So if you had 2 Nirn-Fused, you're wasting it. Make sure it's in the main hand, because then you get the extra 200 weapon damage. If it's in here, you do not. Let me put my Maelstrom axe back on. Feel weird without it. Okay, the rest of the gear. Very important stuff. Automatons. Still using this because we're doing a lot of physical damage. Now, I know everyone screams poison. I do have a build for that. I have a newer player DK, which is focused on poison damage. But this particular build does more physical than anything else. I'm using Infused on all the big pieces, which is the head, the chest, and the legs, and Divines on all the small. And I'm also using 2 Fanged Snake on everything else. Now, the 2 set bonuses, of course. Crit chance, max stamina, contributing to a small amount of our light and heavies, but mostly to our skills. Weapon damage, contributing heavily to our light and heavies, but a little bit to our skills. And then adds 400 weapon damage to your physical damage abilities. Just to recap on what we're using before it gets confusing. This is poison, of course, but it's buffed by our own passives anyway. This is physical. This is physical. So is this. So is this if you use it. Physical, physical, and then poison again. You can see where I'm going with it. As far as the balance goes, we've got a lot more physical damage than we do anything else. So that is why we're using automatons. I've tried lots and lots and lots of different things. Yes, this build is over a year old, and I've altered it every patch since to optimize it as high as possible, and this is now currently the highest it goes for this particular setup. It does make sense if you understand how the damage is applied. Weapon damage on all for the jewelry, and this, of course, 2 Fanged Snake is the same 2, 3, and 4 piece, just in a different order. Weapon damage for light and heavies and a little bit towards your skills. Max stamina to increase obviously your skills and a little bit towards your light and heavies, and then the crit to increase your chance to crit overall. But this also gives you 860 physical penetration for 3 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Now that doesn't look like a lot on paper. It goes to 4,300 if you stack them up 5 times, but it doesn't run out as long as you're doing damage to something. So let's have a dot on him. You'll see it stack up quite quickly. Look at the sword with a brown background on my buffs. You see it just keep reapplying itself. I've got max penetration at the moment. Let's put a dot on him over there. Now watch. When this runs out, we'll make them dots run out. You'll see that I've still got the buff. Food ran out, perfect. This skeleton is no longer taking damage, but he is. And he's keeping my 2 Fang running. Why is that? Because damage is being done while I'm stacking at max. As long as you're doing some damage, it will stay with you permanently. As soon as your damage completely drops off, that's when you lose it. Very, very powerful. Slightly misunderstood because people think it's got a really bad downtime. It does not. Once you're in the fight, it will stay with you. Okie dokie. What do we got? Champion points. Important stuff. You don't have to have them this way, but this is where I put them because this is more optimal for me. But although situations and certain dungeons, trials, whatever, depending on damage you're taking, may mean you need to alter them. But I'm hitting all the jump points and using them as effectively as I can because this is where I personally prefer them. This reduces your incoming damage from direct damage attacks, like a single target fireball or a bow or a light or heavy or something like that. This contributes to that, so you take 8% less damage to those types. You shouldn't be taking them much anyway, unless you're on your own, because a tank should be taking it, but you do get hit by stuff, so it helps. 75 points into here, 75 points into here, to give you 14% across the board for elemental damage and for physical and poison and disease damage. If you put any more points in here, you will not get any benefit from here at all until you hit 15%. And the way to get 15% is to spend a whole 25 points in here. I would not do that because it's really, really high diminished returns and a waste of points. If you put 25 points in here and 25 points in here, you are now hitting 100 on both, and this will have 1 point in it, which won't do anything. Instead, save those 50 points, put them into thick skin to give yourself a 19% additional reduction to damage over time abilities alongside whatever damage type the dot actually is. So this, if you're taking poison dot damage, reduces the flat damage amount by 14% and reduces the fact that it's a dot by a further 19. They work together. Oh, also, if you have to break free, use an expensive ability or a heal. It's really, really cheap. So as soon as you break free, your next ability costs 80% less. Throw out something shiny, throw a Caltrops, throw a heal, whatever you want. Take advantage of this if you break free. This 3% into healing received. This isn't just for the healing received, that damage you do, sorry, heals you do or heals you take. It works for both, but this is also for this passive here. So I'm using 11 just to hit the jump point. I'm using 10 essentially just to get this. While you're resin someone, and you will be resin, you take less damage. So if someone's down, it's your turn to pick them up, or you're actually going to go pick them up. Throw in a vigor real quick, run over, give them a res. While you're taking damage, you take a lot less, and you can heal over the top of it as well. Really, really nice. 28 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. That's quite comfortable for me, but you can put more points in there if you want. Hitting a 12% jump point is quite nice. 75 points into here gives us 14% more stamina back when we heavy attack. Again, if you put 100 points into here, you're wasting them because it will take 25 points to get a whole 1%. The next bonus is 14.7. That gives you nothing. That still gives you 14%. You want the 15, you have to waste 25 points, and that means I can't break free cheaper because I just wasted them. Don't waste 100 points in here. 75, same applies for this, same as this. The jump point is 14%, next one's 15. Don't waste your 25 points. This increases your recovery. You don't need 1% for 25 points. It's a waste. Diminished returns are way too high. Don't mess with them. 52 points into tumbling. We are using stamina as our main source of damage. And we're also medium, which means we take more damage than heavy, and we don't have a damage shield as effective as the shields that you get for Magicka. So with us using our main evasion or avoiding damage, or even blocking if you like, we're going to use the same pool to do that as we do to do damage, and we need both of them. We need to be able to avoid damage, we need to be able to dodge roll, we need to be able to block and break free and all that kind of stuff, and we must hit as well. So we need to reduce the cost of this type of evasion or this type of damage avoiding bonus. So Magicka use their stamina to dodge roll with, just like we do, except they can still hit really hard with their Magicka bar. We use the same thing twice. We kind of need to free up some cost. Otherwise we're stuffed, especially in Maelstrom. This is very, very useful. 16 points into Physical Weapons Expert. This increases the damage of our light and heavies, which we do use a lot, so that buffers that little area there. Master at Arms also affects them by a further 5%, and anything else that counts as a single target hit, which a lot of our abilities do on contact. 56 points into Thaumaturge. We are doing a shit ton of dot damage. We do need this buffered. 20% into here is absolutely fine. Any more than this is a little bit overkill, and not so much in as a bonus as far as Master at Arms is concerned. You can put another 10 points almost into here to max it out as far as your CPs are concerned to 21%. It's not completely max. You can go higher, but 21% you can get from it. But you would then lose 5% across the board to all your single hits. So I actually tested them quite a lot and spent too much money doing so, and this actually played out on top. Precise strikes. We do have high crit chance. We want to make sure that we buffer the crits that we do alongside of our beast trap and all that kind of shininess, so you do want a lot of points in here. 48 hits the 18% jump point, so that's very nice. This one I am going to show a visual on the screen, a little layout of how penetration works based on this particular build and how other buffs can apply to make the boss or the targets go down to 0, and you'll see why this is more comfortable where it is than anywhere else at the moment. You can go higher if you want, but you really don't need to. Across all content, 3k in here, 4.3k into your 2-fanged, you're absolutely fine. You're over 7k penetration, and the rest of the buffs, as you can see on the screen, can show how in certain situations you will hit 0 no problem. 64 into Mighty. We're doing a lot of poison damage, a lot of physical damage. We need to buffer this. Don't go too high with this because diminished returns hit really, really hard on this particular skill set in the champion point tree. It's really nasty. Also, take advantage of this. Just pay attention to the fact that we use ultimates to regain our resources. And if you do go very low health, not only are we a vampire, so we take less damage, so we're likely to survive, but we also get major heroism. Anyone does with 120 points in this tree, meaning that we actually gain more ultimate faster when we go below 20% health. Keep an eye on that one. It's a tricky one, but it's very, very strong. Okay. Now, I need to go over the rotation. Skeleton's almost dead, but basically, it's not too simple to start with if you're looking at it on paper, but you can get into it quite quickly if you're used to doing rotations, especially stamina-based ones. But there are some rules to this. This light attack cancel stuff, you can do it too fast, and if you do that, you won't benefit from this weapon. This weapon is infused for a reason. Not just for the increased weapon damage, but for the cooldown reduction as well. Normally, this glyph will last 5 seconds and have a 1 second cooldown. This glyph does last 5 seconds, but you can reapply it instantly. Now, if you do a light attack too fast, for example, light beast trap swap, you didn't see or hear that light attack, but I fired it. You just hear the sweep. But if you do it too fast, that won't actually connect with the target. It will register as a light attack, but it won't connect. So you'll lose damage first of all, and secondly, you won't proc your glyph. The 4 second one in cooling down, the sword with a black background. But you can reapply it straight away. You see? So when you're halfway through your front bar rotation and that glyph wears off, like it normally would with most builds, you can reapply it straight away before you get to the back bar, giving you a back bar rotation with increased weapon damage. That's why it's infused. Very, very strong. Anyway, we'll run over to this dude quickly because I can show you a lot easier. You start off with your beast trap, of course. You run into the fight with the beast trap, switch to your back bar. Beast trap, volley, light attack, poison injection, caltrops. Now, I know you can get another light attack in there, but if you do, between light attack and caltrops, you actually lose almost half a second, maybe a little bit more, on your dots. And despite how silly that may sound, you actually lose quite a lot of damage by doing so. I know this increases your bow damage by 5%, but you lose your overall DPS because you try to sneak in something that wouldn't fit. And that's why I said earlier, sometimes you can get the most bonus out of that passive and sometimes you can't. So, let's recap over that again and continue. Beast trap swap, volley, light poison injection, caltrops, swap. The initial hit lands on your front bar, so you do more damage. Then it's Then it's heavy attack, blood craze, light attack, venom claw. Then heavy attack, blood craze, light attack, blood craze. Then light attack, blood craze, light attack, beast trap, swap. The rotation does start again with a twist. Instead of volley, light, poison, caltrops, swap, you do it differently. This time we actually do get the bonus damage. Volley, light, poison, light, molten armaments, caltrops, swap. Every second rotation, you do that version of the back bar rotation, because you want molten armaments to be reapplied at least, if you can help it, every 20 seconds, or close to. So, one rotation, you'll go this, light, poison, caltrops, swap. The next time, you'll go volley, light, poison, light, weapons, caltrops, swap. So one rotation, you will get 5% increase to your bow damage. The next rotation, you'll get 10% increase to your bow damage for a few seconds, and get stamina back, and keep up your minor brutality, and keep up your heavy attack damage. It's very important that you do it in that order. Now I'm going to go really fast, not too fast, but I'm going to show you roughly how this works, and then I'm going to show you a demonstration of a DPS test, if you like, with Major Fracture applied. I'm going to explain that part in a moment as well. Beast trap swap. Now I use my molten armaments that time. Got to make sure light attacks are on time. Don't do them too fast. See, that was too quick. Good demonstration actually, because then I can show you how it works. See, I did it on time there, and it procced the glyph. And again, on time, the glyph is on the back bar. Perfect. Get to the front bar, heavy attack, back up again. You have a good 90, maybe 80% uptime on that glyph if you time it correctly. Not always, but a lot of the time. This is very, very powerful. Now I'm going to show you a test real quick. Okay, go. Dude, this is a really good one. I'm way ahead. Major fracture is because if you look at all the DPS tests, in inverted commas, if you want, out there, there are so many rules that people keep making up by themselves, and it's getting out of hand. Basically, a lot of people scream for, what's it called, elemental drain for Magicka because of, quote unquote, their sustain. What you've just told me is you can't sustain. But okay, let's go with that. What you're actually getting from that is major breach, which is what the pierce armor bonus or debuff gives the group, or debuffs the boss, whichever order you want to put it in, increasing your penetration on the target by 5280. Now the physical version of that, major fracture, now the DK gets major fracture from Noxus Breath, the Nightblade gets major fracture from surprise attack, the Warden gets theirs from their Fissure ability, you know, the shulks that go out, the stamina morph of it, and also the other two classes don't. So the Sorcerer and the Templar do not get major fracture. Every Magicka gets major breach in their test, but not all stamina get major fracture. That doesn't make sense to me. So I think every single DPS test, if you want it to be balanced, although balance is a loose term because everyone has their own small or major passives, in the form of extra minor spell damage, minor weapon damage, minor berserk, all those types of things. I know you can't completely balance it on the test, but I think every single test should have either major breach or major fracture applied so it can be balanced as possible. So that's why we use the tank. I could put that buff on myself, but honestly I don't use that skill, so what's the point? Okay, so hopefully that helped. Hopefully that explains more in depth, I guess, how I use my own main DK and what I use it for and how it's performing, and of course the rotation and the passives and everything that are important to this particular setup. Now I know the video's long, but I make sure that I explain everything that I can so you're not cut short of any of the important stuff, as you are with lots of other videos out there. And of course, me throwing you a video for 5 minutes long just saying use this is not what a build is about. You have to understand the build, not just slap on gear and say it's done, because it doesn't work that way. Anyway, I'm done. I'm going to stop waffling because, of course, you're going to be bored by now because it's been nearly an hour. First of all, thank you very much for watching. If you're not supporting or you're not subscribing, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support the channel outside of YouTube, there are links in the description for Patreon, for Twitter, for Facebook, and, of course, the website XynodeGaming.com. Once again, you will be seeing me streaming every single night, 10 PM UK time and onwards. And, of course, I will be bringing out some more build videos for Clockwork City and updating old ones as well. Thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.